खण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनं शलाकया चक्षुरुमिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुर्साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु। Thank our host for allowing us to be here, looking after us, and making our padayatris comfortable. Um, there's someone who insists that it is a question-answer session. My good friend Anand is very fond of questions. So, he wants everyone to ask questions. Now, of course, we will discuss questions. Before that, I would like to make it clear that in this inner spiritual journey, as we progress, the most important thing is experience. And for experience, we had to lead a certain kind of life. We cannot answer questions without experience, without leading that kind of life. Because, for the simple reason that today you will have a set of questions, or I will have a set of. You will get the answers, theoretical answers to theoretical questions. And then, again, some more questions will come up. Then, you will get theoretical answers to those theoretical questions. This is an unending cycle until we descend into the earth and rest in peace. Questions will go on. And answers will also come till the answerer also goes to rest in peace. Once you go there, there is no way we can get up and ask questions. In the Christian burial ground, they write, rest in peace, R.I.P. My Guru Babaji used to say, it actually means rise if possible. Not possible. So then only the questions cease. Till then there are questions. So there is no way to answer finally and remove all questions from anybody's mind. This is not possible. When in the course of one's spiritual progress, one comes across certain experiences, then your questions are answered. I'm not denying that one should not ask questions. That's not what I'm saying. I used to ask my Guru, Maheshwarnath Babaji, many questions. In retrospect, I often wonder what silly questions I asked him. Because as I moved forward, I found that the questions themselves were pretty silly. But he patiently, he said, if he didn't answer the questions, at least he said, "Baad mein dekha jayega." We'll see afterwards. Because he knew that as we move along in the spiritual field of personal sadhana and understanding, these questions answer themselves. Part one. The second thing is, when I answer your question, it is my answer to your question. It's not your answer to the question. Because the answer to your question should come from yourself, not my answer. My answer is a second-hand version of the real answer. Because I am saying something, you are free to accept or reject. When you answer your own question, there is no question of rejection because it comes from your own inner experience. If you look at the Bhagavad Gita, it is considered to be a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. Gita itself declares, the Srimad Bhagavad Gita su Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastri Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvada between Krishna and Arjuna. Now read the Gita. How many places is Arjuna talking, the questioner. Two places here and there. Arjuna Uvacha here. What about other three Bhagavan Uvacha? Why? Because as Krishna declares in the beginning, you and me meaning Arjuna and not you and me, have passed through many lives. You and me have passed through many lives. Only difference is I know and you don't know. Not that you have not passed through differently. Therefore, when you begin to understand, then the answers to your questions will come. Till then, we have to keep. I'll give you another example. You may ask me, how tasty. There is a food which many people don't like in southern part of Karnataka. Kerala to nobody eats. I have a good friend who's with me who looks at ragi mudda and says, now, if I try to describe the taste of ragi mudda to you, unless you eat it, will you know what it is? I can say that it is very tasty. Very means what? I can say that if you have to put ghee in it, it will be nice. But if you have not eaten it, tasted it, you will really not know what I am trying to say. You'll say, oh yeah, it is tasty. Or you may outright reject it and say, this is not tasty. Because you are not accustomed to it. Okay. I'm laying the foundation so that there must be about 100 questions. So I will give me the liberty to do a lucky dip and pick up a few. The other thing is, this subject which we are dealing with, and I hope the questions are about that and not about any politics, which I don't want to answer. This subject which you are dealing with is understood when one understands the limitations of one's intellectual achievements. However much we may think, the mind is limited and cannot think beyond a certain point. I'm not talking, this is not anything new. This is old wine in new bottles. The Upanishad, which is supposed to be the height of intellectual inquiry into the Supreme, itself proclaims, Yan manasana manyute, that which even the mind cannot reach. Now if the mind, when they say mana here, it includes your brain, your intellect, your thinking, your thoughts, everything together. There can't be any mind without thoughts. Therefore, when the mind understands its limitations, and the intellect understands its limitations, and then says, what I am looking for is not within the circuit of this cycle, then only the actual answer occurs. Sorry, it's a question and answer session. You think it's a monologue, I'm going on talking. But we need to give base for discussion. Because otherwise, like a good friend of mine with proper experience said, simply people keep arguing and discussing for no reason whatsoever. Usually, some people ask questions because I think at home they are not allowed to speak. Now that is very easy to answer. You have only to ask them to come to the mic and tell their question, which will take 5-10 minutes. After which you have to say thank you very much and they are very happy. Finished. I'm not saying you should not ask questions. You understand what I'm trying to. Now, the other thing is, all the knowledge that we have, what we call, each one of us calls our rational framework. We all have our rational framework. and we won't move an inch from it here or there. Very difficult to move. Not you. I'm also talking about myself. It's difficult. A small child has its own rational framework. It has studied some textbooks in school, and by the time he reaches high school, he thinks he knows everything. He has a certain framework, intellectual framework, born of the knowledge which he has acquired up to high school. When he grows up and goes to college, his framework changes. Why? Because his inputs have increased. Then what he thought was true, he has found to be not so true. And what he thought was not true, he might have found to be true. Why? Because his inputs, data has increased. It goes on progressively. Then he goes into Newtonian physics, where everything is laid out in proper proportions. Every action has an equal and opposite way, and so on. Then he graduates into quantum physics, if he chooses. When he reaches there, all his firm foundations collapse. Because very important theories of quantum physics is the theory of uncertainty. Where one really doesn't know whether something is a particle or a wave. Even the basic building block of things, nobody is sure. All his sureties are then gone. He says maybe, may not be. So you see, the schoolboy who hasn't touched that is very sure. As you move forward, you're less sure. And then when you go beyond, you're not at all sure. When you're completely not sure, you have found it. Now, this is because all our so-called rational framework which we have is built on the data that is gathered by our five senses, which are called the Pancha Indriyas. Five senses. We have no other instruments of perception, do we? Do we have any other instrument? You can heighten your chakshu or instrument of seeing with a microscope or a telescope, but we actually don't have any instrument in ourselves. So all the data we gather is because of the Panchendriyas, the five senses, eyes, ears, smell, touch and tongue, taste. We have no other instrument. Based on these inputs and data, we create a framework and say this is my rational framework. Unfortunately, these instruments of perception very often are misleading. Very often. May not be always, but very often misleading, and sometimes may even be completely wrong. And it is based on these perceptions from these instruments that we make our rational framework. We'll give you a simple example. Every morning, you may wonder what this has to do with the walk of hope. This is the inner walk of hope. Hoping that we will touch something. Take eyes, for example, one of the instruments of perception. Okay? Simple example. Every morning, according to our eyes, the sun rises. And according to our eyes, Astamichu, it sets. Why did I use Malayalam? I don't know, suddenly. It sets. This is what we see with our eyes. But even a school child will tell you that the sun is neither rising nor setting. What we see. And if seeing is believing, then this must be true. But it is not. Take sound. When you hear a sound, after some time you say the sound has stopped. But the sound never stops. It goes on. The frequency of our ear is not able to detect it beyond a certain frequency. That's all. Not that it is. I can't hear it. There is something called a dog whistle, which the dogs can hear, but I cannot hear. Why? Because my instrument of perception called shrotra, ears, is not built to receive that small sound, that frequency. So you see, therefore, what I'm trying to say is this rational framework which we carry with us is based on this imperfect data. So it has to be imperfect. It cannot be perfect. You can try to make it as perfect as you can, but that's about the limit of it. Now we are saying, we meaning some nuts, mad people like us, or maybe the great rishis, are saying, they're not mad, that we have in the human system other instruments of perception other than these five indriyas. When these are opened and activated, then our perceptions change. And when our perceptions change, our rational framework also changes. Then we have access to a multi-dimensional world and not merely a three-dimensional world. And this capacity to activate this instrument of perception in us, which may be called jnana drishti or whatever you want to call it. I'm deliberately not using the word third eye because it has become very fashionable nowadays. The other day somebody said, in 2 weeks his third eye has opened. I said, thank you very much. Then no problem. You don't have to come to me. So when these hidden instruments of perception which are in us are activated, then you begin to see things which are normally not seen, experience things which are normally not experienced in the three-dimensional world, and it is difficult to bring those experiences and explain in the three-dimensional world. That's also there. That problem is also there. In the Upanishad, the Rishi himself says, Vidmo na vijanimo yathaitat anushishyat. I don't know how to explain this thing to you. I find it very difficult. If a Rishi can say that, what about fellows like us? And most important, you cannot buy it. You cannot buy it, purchase it. You cannot purchase that experience, however much money you are ready to pay. Because it doesn't depend on that. It depends on how much you are able to sacrifice yourself in the journey, not how much you can pay. Because, for instance, a great scientist, forget about religion and so on. Now, Karl Marx, I would say, was a great political scientist, no doubt. Whether he's right or he's wrong, you agree, you don't agree, it's a different matter, but he was. He was so interested in his research, after which he wrote the Das Kapital, that when he died, there was no money to buy a coffin for him. Unlike the leftists of today, okay? Gita, is that your thing screaming? So, they didn't have money to buy a coffin for him. What I'm saying is, the man was so intent on his research that he had no time or anything to work for his own satisfaction. You will see this in the case of all spiritual people also. They're so involved in understanding the truth that other things don't. So, there are no quick solutions, there are no shortcuts, there are no quick answers to questions. Next important thing is that a question should be allowed to remain in your mind, not immediately seek an answer. Because the immediate answer invariably may be wrong. If you allow it to settle down in your mind, you will come up with the right answer at the right time. This is very important, especially in this field. It's not like a theorem like Pythagoras theorem, which you can construct immediately. It is something which is a little bit like quantum physics. And it is not linear logic. It is what in modern terms is called fuzzy logic. Suppose something is there and in between some omkar is coming. If something is there where CV is sitting and I have to attain CV or go towards him, CV is not CVTV, CTV, there's one gentleman here called C. Then I have to move from here till there, right? What if something is here all the time? Where do I move? Upanishad declares that truth to be tad dure tadvat antike, it's far and it's so near. Now that cannot be a physical object. Either he has to be here or he has to be there. He cannot be here and there at the same time. So how do we find out or look at something which is here and now and everywhere and not somewhere where you have to go when all movement stops? All grasping and all movement, when it ceases, when the mind becomes tranquil, then you'll probably get the answer to your questions. Not before that. Having said this, now I'm going to do a lucky dip and pick up some questions. Now this question I do not want to answer right now. It's a very personal thing. Somebody says that you have taken care of me. Enlighten me on what I have to do in future. Thank you. I really don't know if I have taken care of you, whoever wrote this question. But we will look at it later. It's not something which we can discuss. If I have taken care of you, then I am very thankful that I have been able to provide some service. Here is one question which says, where do thoughts come from? Are these always our thoughts? Believe me, in this world where we live, many of our thoughts are not our thoughts. They are picked up from different places. We are so influenced by the outside world that very often our thoughts, we think they are ours, they are not ours. I'll give you a simple example. If you watch TV, today we live in a world where we are bombarded with advertisements. You are watching TV every day for news. Even in between news it is there. Suppose every day you see a little girl dancing and a particular soap powder advertised, and the tune gets into your head, washing powder Nirma. What happens? After this goes on for a while, When I go to the supermarket, without my knowledge, I pick up a Nirma. Is it my thought or somebody's thought? Well, I know Karshan Bhai Patel is a nice man, but washing powder Nirma gets stuck. So we really don't live and think for ourselves. Most of our thinking is borrowed from outside through pressure, through society, through advertisements. The moment you begin to think for yourself without being influenced by any, you will find out the source of your thoughts, from where they come. I don't have to theoretically answer this question. Here is a question which is slightly political, but it's okay. How can countries like China be made to shun expansionism, like Pakistan, North Korea, etc., be made to love life and embrace Vasudhaiva Kudumbam? Honestly, I really don't know how to do that. I think the seeds of living together must be sown in every country, not only here. Because I basically believe in the Vedic dictum, Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, Sarve shantu niramaya. It's not only for us, it's for Sarve bhavantu, and it is Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. So it is necessary, but the practicalities of how to do it, I have not been able to work out. Why? Because first we have to look at the place where we are living in. Unless in our own house, in our own little group, in our own little family, we understand this dictum of Vasudhaiva Kudumba, unless we are able to embrace each other as sparks of the divine in our own house, and look at this idea of expansionism and power in our own little group, how are we going to solve China's problem or Pakistan's problem? Do we mean to say that we don't have a problem here? So we have to start here, in our own house, with our neighbors. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to have this beautiful story. He used to say that God laughs only twice. One, when two brothers go into the field with a tape and measure it and say, this land is yours and this land is mine. God has a good laugh. Whose land is it? There's a beautiful letter written by an Indian chief whose name was Seattle, after whom one of the provinces of the United States is named, Seattle. When the missionaries went there and saw the vast lands and asked him to sell the land to them, he said, I cannot sell this land because this land does not belong to me. He said, this land belongs to the universe, to the whole world. We are only grazing our cattle here. So if you want to graze your cattle, please take. It doesn't belong to me. The other time when God has a good laugh, according to Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, is when the doctor says, definitely you will not die. These are two things that we cannot definitely say. So what I'm trying to say is, let's solve our problem first before we go and solve the problems of China and Pakistan and other countries. If we solve the problem here, perhaps the fragrance of that may waft into our neighboring countries. Nobody is bad. Don't think that people are, everybody is good. But at some point they act in different ways. Even we are not completely good. It's something we have to understand. When we become good, then we will be able to influence others. There is no other solution. Anand, did you force everybody to write? It's a prayer. I, I hope it happens. That is our hope, that it happens and everybody learns how to live together with the experience of the inner. Is Kriya given to everyone? If yes or no, why? Now this question is asked, let me make the background clear. Because in my autobiography, you will find that the parampara which I follow from Maheshwar Nath Babaji is the Nath parampara. But since he was a disciple of Sri Guru Babaji, the method of meditation followed is that of Kriya. Now, Kriya is nothing mysterious. Kriya in Sanskrit means a technique, a method. And the question is, can Kriya be given? Now, when you say, can Kriya be given to everyone, it need not necessarily be the Kriya of Sri Guru Babaji. Method. Different methods are adapted and suited for different people. And we ourselves do not believe that Kriya is a shortcut or that Kriya is the only thing which can take you to God. Because we don't sell Kriya. We don't sell Kriya. If you sell Kriya, then we'll have to say this is the best. You have to take this only. We don't. We can't. It is not offered for a fee. You see? So, for some people, Kriya is suitable. For some people, Kriya may not be suitable or may not be necessary. I have before me someone who is a wonderful violin player, a musician, in front of me. Now, for her, I don't think you need to practice Kriya. Your Kriya is your music. Babaji never said that everybody should do Kriya. Yeah, Kriya means some method by which you can fix your attention on the divine. That's all. Now, if your music can take you there, you don't have to do anything else. I'm not saying that Kriya is unimportant. It is my parampara. I will defend it to the best of my capacity. But it's not necessary. What Kriya Yoga did Mirabai do? Tell me. Nothing. You just prayed and called and cried and reached there. On the other hand, what Kriya did Ramana Maharshi do? We don't know of any Kriya he did. He only centered himself on his true self and found it. So, there are different ways to find the truth. It is not always necessary to do Kriya. We don't say that. I don't say that. So what I do is, that's why when people suddenly come and ask for Kriya, I don't give them because they think that I'm trying to hide Kriya. No. I need to know the person for a length of time before I decide if this person needs to take Kriya. If he does not need to take Kriya, I should direct him to do something else. If he is the Kriya type, if I find out, how do I find out? Only through knowing the person for some time. Suddenly if somebody says, give me, I don't know who he is. Then I say, okay, we'll see. And then when you move with the person and you decide maybe Kriya is good for him, then you should give Kriya. It's not that we are discriminating against anybody. There is nothing. There may be great saints who don't even know anything about Kriya. Quite possible. Kriya meaning this Kriya, Babaji's Kriya. They may be doing something else. Because why I am saying this is, I think what he means is this Babaji's Kriya, whoever has written this question. There are other Kriyas. There are different ways of reaching divinity. There are different ways of meditating. The meditation which is described, in which you hold a linga and look at it, that is also a Kriya. Why do I call it a Kriya? Because it has all the necessities of a Kriya. It may not be this Kriya, it is some other Kriya which was necessary at that time for certain set of people. Why do I call it Kriya? Because it has a symbol, like in Kriya. It has something to do with breath, which is why it's called Pranalinga also. People may not go deep into this, perhaps. And it is also to do with your inner experience, apart from the outer, because it is also called Bhavalinga. Bhava is inside, it's not outside. So that is also a Kriya. So there are many Kriyas. So we have no objection to giving Kriya to anybody, but we have to see if that, see, a person with a weak digestive system can't be fed pickles and papads and hot food all the time. We have to see what kind of person. And please remember, because you have not taken Kriya, it doesn't mean that you will not spiritually advance. Nowhere in my book I have written so. I don't know about others. What is the dharma in Kali Yuga? What dharma are we supposed to do in Kali Yuga? All dharma. What is the aim of all dharma? Why do we perform dharma? Any dharma. Kshatriya dharma, Brahmana dharma, different classifications are there. We perform it for our happiness, for us, for others, and for our inner spiritual fulfillment. This is the aim of your dharma, service. The greatest dharma in any yuga, including Kali Yuga, is service before self, which fortunately also happens to be the motto of the Rotary Club. Service before self. Now, always in this climate which we live in, may not be possible always to do service before self. But the more percentage of selflessness there is in your work, the greater are you moving towards dharma. The less percentage of selflessness in your work, you are moving away from dharma. This is all that we need to look at carefully. We know people who are always thinking about themselves. No thought about even your neighbor or, well, there are people who don't even think of their families, only about themselves. There are rare cases. So if we can move out of that and act in this world, then you are performing your dharma. Otherwise, whatever you do, the more self-centered you are, the less are you doing your dharma. This is my understanding of the matter. I may be wrong. I stand to be corrected, but this is what I think. why are there so many religions on earth? And are they essential for humanity? Are religions man-made or God-inspired? You see, it is like this. If you have food and shelter and clothes, then you have other needs also. And one of these needs is spiritual. Normally our needs are limited to fulfilling our sense organs' desires. But there are some people who begin to think that there may be something beyond. That need for spiritual fulfillment arises in some people. And if you look at the history of religions, you will find that behind every religion there is a founder. Except in the case of what is known as the Hindu system of thought, there are many founders. But generally, at least there will be one founder. And that founder usually is a person who has a mystical experience. Mystical experience. That mystical experience which he has, he tries to transfer it to other people through certain practices and laws and regulations. Say, if this is my experience, if you want to go there, this is what you should do. This is how religions are formed. Now, depending on geographical locations and the public which is there at that time, it may change. When Krishna says in the Gita, Yada yada hi dharmasya, glanir bhavati bharata, abhyudanam dharmasya, tadatmanam, it doesn't mean actually that he is incarnating again and again. The meaning here is that whenever the climate is different and whenever a certain section of society requires a particular guidance, somebody manifests, something manifests in some way with a mystical experience in their hearts so that they can guide them. This is how all religions have come, all religious movements have come. But what happens is, after some years, the organization becomes more rigid than the core. When the organization becomes more rigid than the core, different religions become isolated from each other. That is the problem. They were all inspired by a spiritual experience. But after some time, there may be only few genuine practitioners. The rest, they only follow the rules and regulations laid down by the founder, forgetting that it was laid down at a certain geographical situation for a certain set of people at a particular time. You can't stretch it forever. Or you can't shift it to some other system. When this happens and say, no, that is the right thing, and you don't want to move out of that, then you're stuck. That is where the problem with religions comes. Otherwise, there is no problem. If you look into the roots, they're all with good intentions. Today I was discussing the same matter in the office with our host. And I told him the problem is, Krishnamurti had a wonderful story which he used to relate. I'm not a Krishnamurtite, so don't get worried. Yesterday, Professor Nagabhushan said another word. He said kite. I'm not a kite. But I have been close to this man and I appreciate some aspects of his philosophy. I'm not a bhakta, devotee. But this story is very interesting, which I love this story. He said that once the devil and his close friend went for a walk, and the devil bent down and picked up something from the lawn, from the grass, and put it in his pocket. So his friend asked him, what did you pick up just now? Devil said, I just picked up the truth. Imagine if Satan picks up the truth. He's finished. Because Satan is the opposite of truth. Is darkness while truth is light and so on. So his friend said, in which case, if you have picked up the truth, your days are numbered, you are finished. The dangerous thing you have done. So the devil tapped his friend on his shoulders, smiled and said, don't worry friend, I will organize it. So even truth, if it is too organized, loses its reality. That is the problem. Otherwise, all religions in their own places are wonderful. It is a question of staying or moving a little bit. If you stay too long, it becomes stagnant. It's only in stagnant waters that mosquitoes are produced. Flowing waters don't have mosquitoes. In flowing waters, the nature of this world is to keep moving, and we try to freeze. Jagat is called Jagat because it is Jagatyam, that which moves. Put in other words of another great philosopher, Jangama, movement. One that moves. And instead of flowing, we try to freeze. We try to make even flowing things stavaras. How we do this? It's impossible. The whole crazy thing about photography is that. Sorry. Life is moving, but we like to freeze movements. And then we'll keep it and say, oh, this is wonderful, this is what it, but it is gone. It is left and moved. I'm not saying because I am tired of photograph people, but it's a fact. I mean, we try to freeze what is moving. And that's the whole thing about life. And it's not only photography. When there are precious moments, we like to freeze them because we don't know what's coming next. Should we stop? Sir, it is 7:30 now. There are some more questions. If you allow me, I will stop. The rain has also come. Please enjoy the beautiful rain. I haven't given any special accord to any question. I have just picked up random. Please, I have not discriminated against anybody. Please, I have just picked up and answered the questions. These questions which have not been answered, which have not been picked up, can be answered if you mail me. I have a personal email which nobody reads, which will not come on the website, which you don't have to worry about privacy. Please send it across to me, and please wait a little patiently because so many mails come, it will take some time. And some people have said that they have sent the question, I haven't replied, but they have found the answer. So I don't know. To try it out. The proof of the pudding is in the eating it. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening quietly and silently to what was going on. This is very important in a dialogue. Thank you very much. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaskar.